So I like using homemade foam rolling device. I just take two tennis balls and just put them inside an old sock, one that you don't really need or use anymore. As you can see, this one has been stretched out several years. And just put them all the way flush against the edge of the sock and make a tight knot. So the two tennis balls are really side by side and snug inside the sock. And there you go. I will show you how I explore foam rolling with both that and a more conventional foam roller. And each one will give you a different angle and a different sensation and a different way of working with whatever it is that you're working with in the moment. So let's start with the hips. Here I simply placed the two tennis balls right underneath my hip, so between the edge of the iliac crest and my hip bone. And I'm just letting my weight do the work, relaxing and making my hip heavy. And I'm just ever so slightly, just micro movements, shifting my weight a little bit backwards or a little bit more forward, and just really trying to find the edge of a comfortable stretch around the connective tissue that surrounds the head of the femur. And at this point, I'm right above the hip joint and a little bit on the hip joint. And I really felt a release there, so now I can really let my entire weight on the tennis balls. And notice I'm just ever so slightly lifting my rib cage with my right arm. And I'm really also using my right foot posted so I can have more height, potential energy being transferred into my hip and into the tennis balls. And now if you notice closely here, I'm gonna do these micro movements of my knee and my hip joint. And what I'm basically doing is I'm creating these micro movements while the pressure of the tennis balls is creating a stretch around my hip joint. And the slower and more refined the movement, the better. You don't have to create these large movements, just enough to engage with the tissue around the hip joint, just enough to get that gentle stretch. And of course, always breathing. You don't want to make it too painful, but you do want to challenge a comfortable edge. Taking a breath in, taking it all in, just feeling the change that has happened. Usually what I'll feel is more of a defined sit bone pressing into the floor. And now I'm going to take the tennis balls and place it right beneath the head of the femur, right beneath the hip joint. And all that connective tissue of the IT band really attaches to that area. And it's going to be very bulky, and usually it's under a lot of tension because there's such a large amount of stretch in that area. So again, I'm going to use my right foot to post. I can also use my right hand to give me more stability. And notice my left arm is almost at 90 degrees. And I'm really thinking about opening up my shoulder blades, my scapula, as I'm lengthening the IT band. Taking a deep breath in and out. And again, you can see me exhaling here. And slowly, inch by inch, inching my body up so the tennis balls can come further down towards my knee, lengthening the tissue towards the knee. And sometimes I'll move my neck, because the neck is really continuous with the spine, which is continuous with the sacrum. And as I'm moving my neck, it's also creating almost like a reverberation of the connective tissue of my spine into the sacrum. And I'm trying to create a differentiation. I'm trying to create length in my IT band in such a way that the movement of my spine and the movement of my hips can go unhampered. And as you can see here, now I'm engaging in micro movements of the hip. Again, taking a break, taking it all in, and just feeling the sit bones and how they feel flushed against the floor. So now I'm going to bring the more conventional foam roller. Now this foam roller is pretty dense and heavy duty, so I like to also use a towel. The towel that I'll place over the foam roller will soften it a bit. Depending on the day, I might use a towel or I might not if I feel like I can challenge myself a little bit more. But for today, I'm just going to use a towel. And I'll be using that foam roller on my right hip, just to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the variations that we can use. So again, placing that foam roller on the space between the iliac crest and the hip bone. And what's nice about this is that it's a pretty big foam roller, so I can almost balance myself on it like a seesaw to create more leverage, more weight. And I can also create more weight by opening up my legs and raising my left knee. And as you can see, I'm just trying to find just the right spot. If you hit a nerve and the discomfort shoots to a 10, then readjust, back off a little bit, and once again find the right spot. And here I'm getting a little bit more comfortable, so I can really give my entire weight of my body on that area. And I'm noticing that on my right hip, it's more my piriformis that needs the pressure. So I'm ever so slightly shifting my weight more to the back of the glute. This is your work, your time to explore what it is that you want to explore. So take the time to really find the right angle that works for you. It might be a little bit more forward, more backwards. And I'm really noticing that, yeah, it's more on the back side on my right hip. So I'm going to take advantage of the fulcrum that the foam roller creates and allow myself to suspend myself on that foam roller. And of course, my knee goes up, and that creates even more of a stretch. If I were to straighten my foot, that would create even more pressure. But no need, this is enough. So what I'm doing is I'm letting the weight of my hip relax as I'm kind of like lengthening the back. And now I'm exploring the front of my hip, almost the junction point between my IT, quad, and hip flexors. And I felt like I'm ready to go further down the IT band. This is intense, so take your time. It's not the no pain, no gain mentality. There's a ebb and flow between the connective tissue and the central nervous system. And you want them to be an ebb and flow. You want them to communicate with one another. Don't view your body purely as a mechanical structure, although there is a lot of mechanisms in it. But you want the best of both worlds. And the best way to really bring those worlds together is by challenging the mechanoreceptors within the connective tissue, while at the same time trying to lengthen the amplitude of the central nervous system by deepening your breath, deepening the exhalation. And here, what I'm doing is I'm gently engaging in my knee by bringing my lower leg, my calf, back and forward. And that's just to engage in the muscles while the IT is being lengthened. All right, taking it in, and I'm just gently oscillating my hip back and forward, really feeling the changes. It's good to create change, but a big part of it is feeling the change, letting your body feel what has actually happened so it can learn. So next time you do it, it doesn't have to be as intense. There's already a learning process. And here I'm just doing a butterfly stretch and leaning forward and further stretching my hips. And once again, just engaging in my neck, left and right. Changing the angle a bit, stretching to the left and then stretching to the right. And before I move on, I definitely feel the need to do a child's pose. A great stretch for the hips and the spine. It doesn't always have to be one body part after the other. You can alternate between them. So I know that the more my spine is stretched, the more I feel the oscillations in my spine, the easier it will be for me to stretch any other part of my body. So what I like to do is I like to just move laterally, left and right. And this is a great stretch for the spine and the shoulder blades. There's a funny relationship between the shoulder blades and the hips. I notice in my own practice. Any tension or holding patterns in the shoulders will reflect holding patterns in the hip. And here I am just articulating my hip, just feeling the way the oscillations of my spine interact with the hip itself. So the movement is really happening several places at once. That was enough for me, and I go back to a butterfly stretch. Loosening up a little bit of my spine and my shoulders. Really reaching up to the sky and trying to create a little bit more of differentiation between my rib cage and my hips. All right, and continuing with foam rolling the hips, and now we're just going to foam roll the bottom part of the hips, or where the sit bones or the connective tissue that attaches from the sit bone to the sacrum. So trying to keep my spine as straight as possible so I can generate as much potential energy to go into the hip as possible. I place the tennis balls right around my sit bone, and this again will be an exploration for you. It might be a little bit more towards the sacrum, more away from the sacrum towards the sit bone. You have to find the right angle that works for you, but it does work. Those tennis balls are awesome. They're very portable, and I like taking them with me wherever I go. They're just easy to carry, and I can put them in a backpack. So this is one of the reasons why I'm showing you how to do it with the tennis balls, although because they're small, it's kind of hard to see what's going on, but hopefully you can see. So here, this is a funny a Rolfing technique, an advanced Rolfing technique where we have a body part under pressure, and I think I'm going to gently rotate my foot left to right. Yes? No. Maybe next time on the other part. So again, I used the tennis balls to differentiate my right sit bone, so I'm going to use this foam roller with the teeth to differentiate my left sit bones. And I'm just trying to find the right place. Now my right leg is kind of bent in an angle that way, and that kind of helps my right cylinder to be upright. And once I feel the foam roller is neatly placed in a spot that feels good, I'm just going to hang out there, stretching my hands up, and of course engaging in small micro movements of the neck. Just articulating the spine so the spine can move independently of the sit bones. And I don't know why I felt the call to do that, but I just felt like if I could bend my knee more, I could get a better stretch on my hips. And I really wanted to get deep there while my hips are under a good stretch. Yeah, giving you a better angle of it. So here I'm stretching the piriformis, the gluteus medius, and the minimus, and just like a seesaw, using the foam roller as a fulcrum and going gently back and forth ever so slightly just to get that stretch all around the hip joint. So, finishing with stretching the connective tissue around the knee, this is for me a crucial point. And what I did was simply place the tennis balls right behind my kneecap and let my body weight do the work. You might feel it more in your calf, or you might feel it more in your hamstring. Just be very gentle with this one. This one is pretty intense. And going into almost like a modified child's pose. Really stretching my spine while getting a good calf hamstring stretch with the tennis balls. You want to go slow. And here I'm just exploring again the range of motion of my spine. And if you do it slow enough with sensitivity, you will feel how every single motion of the spine affects every other connective tissue in your body. And now working on my hamstring. Yeah, so here I really felt the need that I needed more pressure, so I can use the yoga block. And this is pretty challenging because you're basically suspending your body on one side. So your muscles are activating. And again, engaging in very small oscillations of the pelvis and the spine, going back and forth And breathing. Always breathing slowly and deeply, preferably from the nose. When we breathe from the nose, we're also creating more oscillation in the sphenoid bone, which is extremely important. And same thing, using the foam roller to stretch out the connective tissue of my hamstring. But remember, it's not just the hamstring that you're working on. You're working on the relationship of the hamstring to the rest of the body. So whenever you're stretching a body part, get into the habit of exploring all the other joints in your spine. Every single movement, every single oscillation, changing of angle, changing of direction is going to affect the quality of movement in that particular part that you're stretching, in this case, the hamstring. And if you can articulate better, it's going to create a better articulating hamstring, because it's going to be done in relationship. So it's not just that you're stretching yourself, it's you're learning about yourself. And just stretching out. And really trying to feel the stretch from the hip. And once again, a butterfly stretch. And a child's pose stretch. I'm not sure what you call this stretch, but be careful with your knee. It takes me a while to warm up because of my knees. And a pigeon stretch. It's really nice to sink into those yoga stretches after opening them up with your breath and the pressure of your body weight on the foam roller. It makes it so much easier, more enjoyable as well. And switching sides. And just stretching the spine, trying to bring that openness all the way into the spine. All right, shifting into the lateral part of the rib cage. I start with the lower part of the rib, right above the floating ribs. Now, this is what the tennis balls are amazing for. really getting into these intercostals of the rib cage. The medial line is so important. Many times we get body work done on our front or on our spine and the back, or we do yoga by opening the front and the back. But the medial line is so crucial. It's such a big part of our bodies, and it's an important part of a well-functioning body. So what I'm doing here is I'm engaging in the articulation of my ribs by circling my left shoulder blade while gently applying pressure on the tennis balls on my right side of the rib cage. And that really helps create more differentiation between the different structures of the body, between the different structures of the rib cage. And it's intense, so please do it slowly. I inched the tennis balls up higher. And there's also a lot of reflex points in the side of the rib cage. A lot of reflexive points that can reverberate all the way to your organs, in this case to the liver or to the gallbladder. So again, creating the stretch using the tennis balls and the intercostals and engaging in the articulation of the other shoulder blade. So you're really learning how it is that your rib cage opens up and closes like an accordion while mobilizing different parts of your body. And here I'm just engaging in small oscillations of both my pelvis and my head. I don't know if you can tell. I can barely tell, but yes, I'm definitely doing that. Just ever so gently oscillating the hip back and forth, or oscillating my rib cage a little bit to the front or to the back, just to find that spot that I feel that is stuck, so all the other parts of my body can move without interference from that particular adhesion. And I'm really reaching with my right shoulder blade. And that's enough. This is intense. So take your time. You can always do more on another day. And just really feeling the difference and the range of motion between the two sides. Again, so my body can learn the difference. So now we're going to do the same thing, this time using the foam roller. And for this part, I definitely need some padding. So I'm actually going to use more of the towel to cover the teeth, to give me more of a padding for my rib cage. And there is going to be a significant difference between the two. Not that one is better than the other, but they are different because the foam roller gives you a more of a broader contact, and that's really nice. It interfaces with the connective tissue in a different way. And here I really felt like there was a big plane on my rib cage that was going more to the front of the body, that was creating a pulling on my rib cage. So I just adapted, shifted, and rather than staying on the side, I just went to the front, right underneath my breast tissue. As a man, I do have a little bit of tissue, but I'm underneath the nipple right here, still on the lower part of the rib cage. It's such an important area because it interfaces with your diaphragm, and if you have any type of adhesions in that area, it's going to affect the entire position of the rib cage, which is also going to affect the entire position of the hips. And here I'm working on the back side of the rib cage. Still on the lower medial part of the ribs. And using my hands to really get that stretch on my neck. So I'm imagining stretching my neck so I can pull on my spine between my shoulder blades while I'm stretching out the connective tissue of the rib cage. In my mind's eye, I have this visual, kinesthetic sensation of the weight of the connective tissue of my spine, the weight of the connective tissue of my shoulder blades, and what I need to do to create a bigger container of my rib cage, from my rib cage, so these structures can flow through my rib cage in a more harmonious, free-flowing way. And again, here I'm getting more towards the middle, right below the shoulder blade, but I'm still focusing on the rib cage. And here I am working right on the border of the scapula. Again, just like before, doing some minor articulations. Whew. This is intense. This is intense work. Just as intense as anything else, and your body will get used to it with time, like anything else. And here I'm just feeling the results, and it feels amazing, guys. It really does. Yeah.